from history to build for the future. We're here with Santa Ana and regional leaders to reflect on keynote speaker Pete Sosa's presentation, The Eyewitness to History, and explore how our understanding of history can inform and build a stronger community. My name is Ryan Smolar, and I'm with Downtown Inc. in downtown Santa Ana, and I'm excited to introduce you to our esteemed panel today that includes Mayor Vicente Sarmiento from the city of Santa Ana, Dr. Rigo Rodriguez, the board president of the Santa Ana Unified School District, Otto Briseño, the co-president of Unite Here Local 11, and the chairwoman of the Democratic Party of Orange County, Norma Edith Aguilar Andrade, the consul of Community Education and Culture for the Consulado de Mexico in Santa Ana. And we would like to start this panel by having you guys actually introduce yourself briefly and a reaction to Mr. Sousa's work. Starting with you, Mr. Mayor Sarmiento, please tell us.
Hey, thanks, Ryan, and thank you to everybody over at Boca de Oro, all of you who are putting this together. I know this is quite a challenge because we're normally doing this in person. And so, hats off to all of you to have it continue going, albeit virtually. But look, I'm just really happy to join you all here and welcome, Pete Sousa here to Santa Ana virtually. I want him to get to know who we are because by way of us, hopefully he can get to know our community of very talented and creative people here. So thank you to Downtown Inc. And everybody here that made this possible because we do have a unique community and boy, we're just really fortunate to have a person like Pete here, somebody who had a bird's eye view to two iconic presidents. They couldn't be more different, but sometimes I think, kind of similar. They were the type that realized that perception and image really are important because it tells a story in one singular view. Pete's also an award-winning author. So, I got a chance to, peruse his work and it's certainly, inspiring. So, I'm just taken aback by, how much access he had and how fortunate he was, right? To be able to, not only cover one president, but cover two. And I think that what he was able to do is kind of define history and legacies for both of those presidents, Reagan and Obama. And, how fortunate we are to have him here to be able to talk to us about what his experience was. For me, I think, what's important is that, we talk to our, young people in Santa Ana who are so creative, who can realize that their talents and their gifts that they have can be shared this way and they can aspire to be, people that are going to change the world, right? And maybe change perception. And we have such a unique opportunity here being in the downtown area where there is creativity that hopefully Pete realizes. And through his work, what we see is that he was able to cover things like, the healthcare bill being signed into office, what it was like to, be in the room when the recession was going on and banks were failing. And, you had, President Obama coming in to moments like Newtown, right? Where he's trying to console people and parents and, and to moments of being in the, in the White House when bin Laden was, was assassinated. So you just have so many different, areas, both moments of strength, moments of sadness. But I guess for me, what I was, kind of moved by is, Pete was married there at the White House. And, there's a photograph and an image of Pete's mom touching President Obama on the cheek. And she was, obviously he's tall. I think he's like 6'2" or 6'3", but, she was a shorter woman. But just for her to reach up to him and him to, lean over to her, it was just the kind of moment, I think, that makes us realize we had a really special person in the White House during that time. And I think Pete was able to cover it. And he did such an incredible job because when you're looking at all those images, it kind of brought you back to that era, right? And how much we missed it over the last 4 years, right? And I just think that, he's somebody who brought humanity. Pete brought humanity through his work to all of us. And we were able to see that side of President Reagan and President Obama, who were so different, but yet, he captured, I think, the essence of both their humanities. And so, it was, it's quite a talent to be able to do that. And so we are very fortunate to have him here. So I just want to welcome him here to Santana and tell him that, look, when we open up and we're able to be here in person, hopefully he comes back and visits us again, and we're able to do this live and in person.
Oh, what a warm welcome. And it sounds like you're as big a fan as we are.
Totally.
I'd like to welcome Santa Ana Unified School District Board President Rigo Rodriguez. Rigo, could you introduce yourself briefly and any initial reactions to Pete Sosa's work or talk today?
Sure. Hi, I'm Rigo Rodriguez, and I'm glad to be here with you all today, especially with Mayor Sarmiento, Ada Briceño, Lupe Lopez, and Norma Aguilar. I just wanted to also underscore how important Pete Sousa's work is. I'm looking forward to sharing more of my comments during the Q&A, but I think in general, I really appreciated the way in which his own personal trajectory as a photojournalist also traces the evolution of photojournalism, going from kind of a prior era that depends so much on newspapers as the and kind of 1-2 channels as the primary source of information, to now in the digital age with social media and the attack on journalism, his own shift to Instagram and being able to find other ways in which to really portray authenticity and truth. So I really appreciate that we've brought him to our city. So welcome.
Excellent points. Yes, we're here at Godinez High School today, and we were all taking career notes in the background for all the points that he shared on that. Next, I'd like to introduce or have Ada Briceño introduce herself and any reactions you have to the work or the talk.
Thank you so much, Ryan. If you don't mind, I'd just like to say a couple of things about myself. But I'm an immigrant from Nicaragua, struggled like many of our immigrant families right out of high school, entered working in a union hotel where I found my voice. I am now co-president of a union representing over 32,000 room attendants, cooks, and dishwashers across Los Angeles and also Arizona. And for 30 years, I've stood up side by side, courageous women and men who every day fight to make sure that they have justice in the workplace and in our society. I became a women's rights activist, an environmental rights activist, and an immigrant rights activist, went into politics. Recently, I've been heading the Democratic Party of Orange County for the last 2 years. And I just ran and won to be DNC member to make sure that we have folks, who are missing, voices that are missing from the table be there. So look, for me, it was hearing him. It reminded me that we've been craving that humanity from the office of the presidency, right? It put into perspective maybe things that, I didn't think were important, formalities that maybe, I didn't pay attention to, but I'm so thankful. And I assume that Pete also was so thankful to see and to acknowledge, and to see through his work what a courageous and great human being President Obama was. He really upheld the office and was an example to all of the Americans. So he led from empathy and just dignified the office, and that was very apparent to me watching it, and I'm glad that we can get to that place again. I'm very happy, and I'm not taking anything for granted ever again.
Excellent. And Consul Norma, please introduce yourself and your ideas about the work. And we also want to offer our heartfelt condolences about the news about Consul Cuevas, who's a very generous man and well-liked throughout our community, and we're really sorry to hear about his passing. Oh, and Norma, you're on mute.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And Muy buenas tardes, yo soy la cónsul Norma Edith Aguilar Andrade, cónsul para Asuntos Comunitarios, Educativos y Culturales en el Consulado de México en Santa Ana. Y como muchos de ustedes saben, estamos muy tristes por el fallecimiento del cónsul Mario Cuevas, quien fue nuestro líder por más de 5 años en el consulado, y rendirle un tributo es seguir trabajando con y para la comunidad mexicana en el condado de Orange. Muchas gracias por la invitación al Consulado de México de Santa Ana para participar por 5ª ocasión consecutiva en este maravilloso evento Festival Boca de Oro, que sin duda se está convirtiendo en un gran evento anual en la región, y espero muy pronto sea a nivel nacional y, por qué no, internacional también. El compromiso que tienen Robin McNair, Madeleine Spencer, Ryan Smoran y muchos otros colaboradores es admirable. Ahora, pasando a la pregunta de cuál es la reacción del trabajo de Pete Sosa, debo decir que es absolutamente fascinante, y como fotógrafo sensible, humano, y su pasión por captar los momentos claves de la historia, que lo refleja con gran maestría. Estas fotografías retratan no solo momentos relevantes de la historia de los presidentes Reagan y Obama, sino también su lado humano y cotidiano. Muchas veces uno piensa que un presidente o un alcalde como el que tenemos ahora aquí son personas diferentes, pero al verlas en actos cotidianos se vuelven muy humanos. Quiero contarles una anécdota cuando yo vi por primera vez a un presidente. Fue en México, por supuesto, era yo una niña, tenía 8 años, era en el Zócalo de la Ciudad de México, y de mi escuela nos llevaron a cientos de niños a una ceremonia, y mi corazón palpitaba porque iba a ver a un presidente, y cuando lo vi me impresionó ver que era como cualquier otra persona, que por supuesto tienen méritos para llegar con sus logros a esos puestos, pero a través de la imagen que muestra Pete Sosa, de cómo un presidente puede tener valores como la empatía. Y hoy en día, cuando estamos viviendo los efectos de la pandemia, es más importante que nunca tener y aplicar la empatía en estos días en nuestras vidas. En el condado de Orange y en Santa Ana somos muy afortunados de tener en la comunidad líderes también gubernamentales y sociales que han demostrado este valor, y muchos otros para ayudar a los demás. Yo los invito siempre a ponerse en los zapatos de los demás. Esto es empatía, ya que tendremos un mundo diferente. Nadie puede predecir el futuro, pero con valores como la empatía, la honestidad, la sensibilidad, la gratitud, la humildad y la responsabilidad, estoy segura de que lograremos un mundo mejor. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Norma. And finally, we have Lupe Lopez Donaje from the Native Voices OC. Lupe, if you could introduce yourself and any thoughts to the work or the talk.
Absolutely. Good day, everybody. My name is Lupe, and I just want to introduce myself. As traditionally Native people do, is when we come into things like this, we must introduce who we are and where we're from. My name is Lupe, and I'm Otomi Yaqui Indian, and I'm originally from Stanton, California, in a community that is known to us and we call Crow Village. That's the community I'm from, born and raised, with deep generations of families here in Orange County. And what I want to just say, probably a repeat of what everybody has said, was that Pete captured the moment. He captured the moment of work and humanity, and what the president was trying to advocate. And I just want to say that as Native people and the White House, it is that moment now. We see Deb Haaland, the first Congresswoman, Native American, and also going into the next is the voting of the confirmation for her to be the Secretary of Interior, a cabinet member. That's first ever, to have a Native American woman to be actually our voice. So capturing the moment is what Pete was doing. And I just can connect to it and relate to it, that it is our time. It is our moment to capture.
Excellent. Well, welcome everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you and to unpack a little bit of what we just heard from Pete and also from his incredible time in the White House. So Pete Sosa's photography, it says a lot about the power that exists inside a single point of view and the power of a voice. Each of us has our own voice that we can use, whether it's writing, speaking, taking photos, or dancing. There's many different ways. So how did you find your voice, and what advice would you give to someone who wants to strengthen their own voice? And this is an open invitation for any of you to answer.
I can start. So I told you earlier that I worked at a hotel as a front desk clerk, and as an immigrant, it was pretty tough going into school, teased and challenged every single day, struggled in school, and it was kind of in a depression. But when I came into the hotel, I found my voice. I challenged authority for the first time to make sure that my rights were uplifted. I learned how to speak up for myself, but I also learned how to speak up for other coworkers, servers, and dishwashers. And that really gave me meaning. It really started my career and my passion for speaking up against injustices. So it really changed my life, and I think I'm just quite a different person because of that experience. I think that one of the things that I feel that was helpful for me in finding my voice is just that I followed my heart and my instincts. I may not have had all the answers, but I was leading with love and from a place of justice. So we need so many other people to find their voice and lift up their voice, because there's so many things that we need to have leaders move forward. I would also say that finding mentors, people that you admire in the same field that you're seeking to insert your voice, is also a very powerful thing. But dive into the work, absorb it. If it's, do the work and your passion will come through. I'm very fortunate because my union taught me my leadership skills, and I feel so thankful to have been trained by a great group of leaders who are not into titles, but they just believe that training leaders so that we can accomplish our collective goals.
I want to add on to that, similar to what was said, that it's what we witness, what our experiences are, because that is very true. Growing up as a young girl, I witnessed a lot of inequity. I witnessed a lot of racism and discrimination. And, when you witness and observe and you're going through that process, you find that voice in you that you want to say something, you want to do something. And that's what happened, to me, is that I couldn't stand for it anymore. And seeking out, good thing there was people out there that took me under their wing. And now what do I do today is I help others, and I mentor, and I take them under my wing too, and show them a path, and guidance, and being that mentor to others so that they can find their voice. But I just want to say that it's part of us, growing up, is the communities that we lived in and the inequities that we faced. Because in reality, for women of color, such as myself, it was, statistically speaking, it was just, statistics were made that people like Ada and myself, we weren't supposed to be in positions of power. We weren't supposed to be educated. We were supposed to, be victims of violence. We were set to be uneducated, dropout, a teen pregnancy, in and out of jail, drug addiction. That's what was set out for us. But we found a voice and we changed it. So I'm very pleased that to see a lot of us here on this panel that are making changes and voicing and being out there for others to assist and mentor.
So Ryan, let me jump in really quickly. And I also, want to say thank you to Rigo, Ada, Lupe, and Norma. We all know each other personally, so it's good to be on this, friendly, good panel with a lot of good people on. I have a lot of hope just because, you know, and probably Rigo can, you know, can attest to this. We have a lot of young people that come to the city council meetings, and right now, not physically, of course, but they attend virtually, and they'll stay on hours, right? Just to speak for 3 minutes. And how articulate they are and how strong they, you know, they you know, demand things, information. It's really, to me, you know, hopeful to see that, because I, you know, see 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds. And at that point in my life, you know, I had never stepped into a council meeting or a chamber, right? So to see this and to see the trend, and many, many young people doing this, you know, making very clear, coherent, strong statements and asking difficult questions, you know, taking time out of their day, you know, to do that. That to me is very impressive. So look, I think Santana has a lot of hope because of that. One thing I know that, you know, allowed me, because part of the question is, you know, what happened in your life? Well, I took an acting class, which was probably the most difficult, uncomfortable, you know, space for me to be in, because at that time I was a real timid kid. But to be put on stage and somebody critique where you stand, how you say something, you know, the tone of your voice, it was just sort of those creative moments that you kind of find your voice and you overcome a fear that's really strong. So to the extent that, you know, anybody, especially, you know, young people that do find themselves timid or sometimes passive, put yourself in that uncomfortable space, overcome it, and you will find your voice. So, you know, just one little, you know, bit of information. So anyways, thanks.
If I may.
Please, please.
Okay, gracias. Well, my presentation is in Spanish because it's the official language of Mexico. I hope you don't mind.
And Norma, just so you know, you are welcome to do either English or Spanish, but you are being translated into Spanish as well.
Muchas gracias. Mi voz la encontré con el apoyo de mis padres, quienes me dieron mucha fortaleza, sobre todo mi mamá. Y al hacerme responsable, porque ella me decía que tenía que hacerme responsable de mis decisiones, porque me iban a afectar exclusivamente a mí. Mi voz fue creciendo junto con mi anhelo de ayudar a otras personas. Yo ingresé al Servicio Exterior Mexicano cuando tenía 22 años y me hice cargo del Departamento de Protección a Mexicanos en el Consulado General de México en Nueva Orleans. Y era una labor tremenda porque tenía que viajar a Memphis, a Tennessee, a Luisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, que era el área que cubríamos. Y al ver que en el desarrollo de mi trabajo vi lo afortunada que yo había sido por haber tenido la oportunidad de estudiar una carrera universitaria, y eso me comprometió a seguir apoyando a la comunidad migrante en este país. Y a lo largo de mi carrera profesional he tenido grandes jefes como el cónsul Cuevas que me han enseñado y han apoyado mis decisiones. El consejo que yo le daría a alguien que quiere fortalecer su voz es que escuche su voz interior y sus deseos, sin importar lo que otros le digan o que le digan que no se puede. Por experiencia propia hay que tener sueños y la realidad siempre va a superar los sueños. Y sobre todo, tener sueños, pero también tener compromiso, disciplina y la voluntad de que sus sueños se hagan realidad, ya que el trabajo duro siempre pagará y se materializarán los logros. Entonces yo creo que ese es uno de los consejos importantes para todos, y yo sé que aquí en Santana hay gente muy comprometida para ayudar que los sueños se hagan realidad. Gracias.
Well, on my end, I think I have to go back to an experience that I had when I was 11 years old, where I found my voice. I went to a very elite public speaking class, and that class was working at the flea market selling cassettes and 8-track tapes when I was 11 years old, trying to help the family make money. And I had to also sing the songs in order for the cassettes and 8-track tapes to be sold. And I hate singing, but that's the way we made money. And that's when I found my voice. It's not a singing voice, It's just a voice of, I can communicate, and when it comes to surviving, we have to do what we need to do. But my voice later was strengthened when I went to UC Irvine and I majored in Chicana and Chicano studies. And I really found and reaffirmed and appreciated my cultural roots. So Lupe, when you introduced yourself as Otomi and Yaqui, that's what I mean, that by appreciating our cultural roots, I was also able to appreciate the power of my mother, the power of my father, their struggles, and how what we're doing today is really part of a longer struggle and history of speaking up and of making society better, more inclusive. And so one of the things that really stands out to me about what Pete Souza did is that his work speaks to me as the power of representation. Because when he was representing President Obama, he wasn't just representing the institution of the presidency and humanizing it. He was also simultaneously humanizing a Black man as a president. So the real fake news that he was taking on at that time was all that racist imagery that mainstream media promotes and that makes many of us feel belittled. And so when he's able to project an image of a Black man as president and humanize him, he's also taking on all this other representation that keeps casting us as somehow less, and that we have to really, by appreciating our cultural roots, we strengthen our voice. And to me, Santa Ana and the mainstream media in Orange County have depicted Santa Ana as somehow less than the rest of Orange County. And I'm hoping that events like Boca de Oro become ways that we can represent our community in ways that policymakers and other leaders are able to move policy in a direction that supports our community. So instead of gentrifying and kicking our community out, we appreciate our community and we implement policy that allows our community to stay here and create roots. So again, that power of representation came out very strongly in Souza's work, and also speaks to me because I think that's been the source of the voice that I've been able to use over the course of my life.
Wow, I really appreciate all of your personal stories. Thank you for sharing them with us. There is an idea from the audience as well that's interesting. They're requesting maybe collectively we can take some action to empower more people to have a voice from today's talk and from the visit of Pete. And they're suggesting a photo contest for more people to be able to find their photographic voice, which is an interesting idea we might have to talk about further. Very much continuing on the thread that you've opened up, Rigo, for us, Pete Souza's work reveals a lot about leadership, about the big institutions, the big symbols of our country, but it also showed in a larger sense that it's about the everyday choices that leaders make. So what does leadership mean to each of you, and what are some of the approaches that you use around leadership and why?
So I'll go ahead and tackle this one since we can get the ball rolling on this. But look, I think just to reflect on Pete's work that he was, demonstrating, I think he caught, because his focus tended to be on President Obama, caught President Obama in moments where he was struggling, right? And that's where I think, all of us can understand leadership is very simple to do when things are going well, right? It's easy to make decisions that people are going to be happy about, people are going to agree with you on. But I think the leadership that Pete was capturing, and just generally leadership, is demonstrated when there are moments of crisis, right? Where people's lives are going to be affected, when people are going to be impacted, where people may not agree with you, and that's when I think leadership becomes a dilemma, right? And I think that some people will stray from that and say, well, what makes sense to me as an individual versus making a decision that's going to impact people's lives generally. So I think those are the qualities that, I think make it really difficult for a leader to be successful, right? Sort of that, like Kennedy's profiles encourage, people lose their roles, they lose their positions, they lose their futures, and they sacrifice those because they realize there's a greater good. So that's where I think, you can see a lot of the leadership overcome. And when, decisions, having to do with, with healthcare, decisions having to do with, going and, and maybe, making a difficult decision when it came to, the Osama bin Laden moment. There are moments that really test your fortitude. And I think that's where I think all of us, know it's when we have those tough decisions is when you lead. I think for electeds or people of color who are, who are representatives, it's that much more challenging because the bar is so high, right? Because I think when they see us, unfortunately, they see somebody, who maybe isn't as qualified, not as competent, maybe got in through some other means. And, that goes back to sort of, educational barriers and so I think for those of us, who have been able to have some success, whether it's academically, whether it's politically, or socially or economically, I think the bar is very high. So I think the leadership is also a responsibility we have to the communities that we represent to do good jobs, right? To make sure that we do things that are that can stand up and withstand that scrutiny that we know is honest, because the lens of scrutiny is so much stronger, I think, on leaders of color, because I think that's to me what came through really forcefully in Pete's work of Obama, right? I mean, they knew that they were questioning him because he was the first Black or person of color as president. So I think that's what a lot of us feel sometimes, is the weight of others, not only to lead well, but also to not, to leave a good legacy for others to follow. And that's kind of, what I see as leadership, moving forward is.
I'll jump in and I'll just say that for me, leadership is whether it's a good one or a bad one. In, for example, Trump and his bad leadership. He leads a large group of people, and we see how detrimental. Not only did he take us way back for God knows how long, but he also, in my opinion, is very responsible for where we're at, for where we got to in the pandemic, and his lack of, of acting upon it. So, there's a great responsibility with leadership, and great repercussions with it. I also want to say that I believe Pete, saw leadership and learned from Obama, from his leadership. If you all remember, there were a few times that, he mentioned that he was not political before. And there were people that said that, they didn't think he was political. And, he saw the moment that was put in front of him, and he had no choice but to come out and use his leadership and use his voice to contrast what was happening and how dangerous he saw. So I believe that he was inspired by Obama to use his leadership, and that he felt a responsibility not to be silent. So I really do believe that leaders, have a responsibility, to widen the table, to make sure that we're expanding leadership. And, at all times when other leaders are coming up, for us to step aside so others can help lead the way, right? I think that's important. And, my union taught me that, win or lose a campaign, we're judged by, not winning or losing, but how many people are we developing to learn how to stand up for themselves and others. I think that's really crucial. I think that it's a responsibility of a leader to convene people, to inspire people. Sometimes, it's hard, but leaders have got to be truthful and say, even if it's hard, even if it's, troublesome, or they are afraid of what the repercussions are, but they need to understand and trust the people that they're leading, that they will do the right thing when they put their minds to it. We also need to believe in the young people to lead. and to push each other to reach our goals, right? Sometimes I don't believe in a plan B, because if we set a plan B, we're not going to reach our plan A, for example. But leadership also means responsibility to be the best person in every aspect of your life, even though every leader is a human being, but just striving towards that, I think it's important. But also, how do you figure out how to move the issues? How do we set a plan? Be bold about what the plan is. But, you know, I think as leaders, we need to figure out how to listen. We need to be able to step in other people's shoes, even though it may not be what you want to do to begin with. I also feel like it's really important to be open and to take criticism, because those are the things that make people grow. When you get beat up, you come out of it a lot stronger, and leaders get beat up all the time, right? So I think it's really crucial to be open-minded, to be open no matter where it comes from. But I can't emphasize enough how I believe that it's responsibility of leaders to be bold and see opportunities. Just like Pete did. He saw an opportunity that the work, and only he knew it. He had the tools to make people see what was happening. So to be able to visualize that and take that opportunity, and take a gamble, right? You don't know how it's going to come out, but when you're truthful and well-intentioned, it is often very successful. So, and lastly, I'll say that if you don't change as a leader, that if you don't evolve and keep up with what's happening, then we're not doing justice to the people who follow us.
Wow, this is turning into a masterclass on local leadership. And I'm curious, Rigo, do you have any perspectives from your
Very well
entrepreneurial and
said, Aiden.
education and arts work on this topic?
Yeah, as I was listening to Mayor Sarmiento and to Ada, I kept pressing the heart buttons because you're speaking to me as well. So just from my angle, you know, Sousa's criticism of the Trump administration, it's not on the basis of politics, right? He didn't, in that documentary, he doesn't take a stance on Trump's politics or policies. Sousa's criticism is more a moral question, right? It's about morality around empathy, decency, and openness or inclusion. And so for me, leadership is primarily a moral question that exceeds politics, because look, I've had my problems with Obama around immigration, incarceration, militarism, right? He pursued a political line that I fundamentally disagree with. But unlike Trump, he was empathic, right? And so there, if you're not empathetic, you don't understand or connect to someone else's pain or struggles. You don't understand. And if you don't have decency, you dehumanize and put down others, and right? And you don't listen. And so I agree with what Ada said about being open and being open to criticism. And that's what I also saw in that that documentary around Obama. You know, he was empathic when Sandy Hook, the killings there, and he took the time to visit, where he, every 3 months, he'd go to the Veterans Administration, the hospital, and really understanding that decisions we make as leaders have consequences. And again, without that moral anchor, leadership can go in so many directions. And so that's really what I take from both his work, and really what I stress as far as leadership. It's, you're not always making the right decision, but that moral compass has to be very, very grounded.
Lupe, do you have a native perspective you can add to this on leadership, or for you personally?
Well, I wanted to say that it takes great leadership for our leaders to take on an evaluation or the opinions of Native people. And I'll tell you why. Because Native people are small in numbers, and we may not have that political clout. But when you see leaders that are truly there to bring equity, then that tells you that that leader is out there for all peoples. And that's one of the things that, you know, Native people, we have a situation with leaders in local, national levels, is that they don't want to hear our voice because of that political clout. But what they don't know is that Native people have allies. We have many, many allies that are non-Native. And those allies know the positions that these political leaders take. And so I just wanted to say that a true leader in our Native traditional way is that we always listen to concerns, and we always make sure that we're thinking outside of the box and see what is the best way to assist in the communities. And I would just say that as leadership, as Indian people, we've always had leadership positions in our tribe, in our traditional communities, and we still hold leadership positions because of that government to government respect and that government to government of sovereignty. And but we always truly believe that as Native people, you know, we know that it is our voice that needs to carry out in the representation of our community. But we want to be in those meetings and discussions with political leaders and leaders. And I really liked, I mean, I just really liked everything that Ara said, because leaders also expand that table for others to come in and have a seat on the table. And I'm just really pleased to be here amongst great leaders and hear them talk and allow them to hear from me, because I hear that this is like the 5th year of this event, and I'm just so glad that, you know, this is our moment, that Native voices are in Orange County are on the rise, and we are being invited finally, you know, after all these years since 1492, but we're being invited now in 2021. But it takes allies like, you know, my good sister there, Ada, and the mayor and others that are here to know that we have concerns. And even in Santa Ana Unified School District, we have concerns about our Native student population. It's small, but there's a crisis happening. And I'm a voice to bring that to the table and be transparent about it. And it's not to ruffle anybody's feathers, but hey, there's a crisis here. And in Orange County, there's a crisis with our Native population that has the highest suspension rates than any other race in the school districts. So, you know, that takes a leader right there to voice something and to knock on doors. And the doors may be shut, but we got to knock on doors again. And that's something that, you know, me and Sister Ada, you know, just in the past work that we do, but we keep going. So I'm just going to leave it there.
Thank you so much. And I just want to reiterate some of the things that we've heard from the panelists so far is above all empathy as being a cornerstone quality of leadership, widening the table and being inclusive and inviting all the voices in, accepting feedback, so critical and such a hard skill, and recognition of the toughness of the skin of the leader to have to face so much, fight so much, and overcome so much was really exciting. And I started getting a little nervous as Ada was talking about these battles, but as that idea sort of emerged into the battle to develop ideas and the battle to develop people, that's quite a beautiful battle to get engaged in that I think anybody would want to fight in. And Norma, we'd love to hear from you on this. And I just also wanted to say that I was complimenting your leadership yesterday on the phone to someone with regards to your work bringing the Wings of the City statues to Santa Ana a few years ago, because that was such a remarkable thing that you did, and the way that you persuaded and really led the whole town to take an action that benefited so many people and was so positive, and that we'd really like to see things like that happen again in the future. So I was just complimenting you on that, on your execution of that. So I'm not sure if you want to talk about that or a little bit more about this, but we'd love to round out this topic with you.
Well, thank you very much, Ryan. And it could, Alas de la Ciudad could not have happened if it wasn't for people like you. So I am very happy that it happened, and hopefully with the mayor's help, we can bring another some other exhibitions here to the area, because it was very nice to have it for over 2 years. Well, talking about leadership, if I think the Spanish is not being translated, but I'm going to tell you that leadership to me as a government representative is to look for the best way to help people. And as the word says, we have to lead them. But to lead somebody, you have to have followers, and you would not have them if they don't believe in you. So this is very important, that you have credibility with people. So leadership conveys, as everybody has already said, responsibility, honesty, confidence, and connection with others. And that includes your teamwork and people you serve. And that's what Consul Mario Cuevas had. He had a lot of credibility in society. That's why the community is so close to him, because the credibility of what we do in the consulate every single day in different matters, not only in documentation or cultural or community affairs, but everything as a whole, that people feel confident that when they come to the consulate, they can be, we can help them in perhaps in not the very best way they want, but we can just at least advise what is the best way for them to do. And as we said, as you have already said, everybody, and I think that because of Pete Sosa's work, one of the leadership ability is to be in the shoes of somebody else. That's empathy. And also is to look for the integral benefit of everybody. And I think that if a leader has that vision, they can very well perform whatever they want. Thank you.
Excellent. So Pete Sosa's work is part creative and visionary, and it's also part art historic record. So it really raises questions about history, how it comes to be, how it shapes us in the future. So how has history helped shape your work, and what history are we making today for the future?
Well, I'll start off with that. Natives have had a history since the arrival of colonization. So I'll start off with that. And the work that it has shaped us since 1492 is to take care of our people. And right now, during this pandemic, we've known that we have gone through pandemics like this in the past, with smallpox and, a lot of other diseases that hit us. But I'll tell you, Native people got hit hard with this pandemic. We've had a high rate of deaths, and we had to take the leadership to take care of our own because no one else was looking out for us. And we had to make sure that we voiced ourselves in the government system to say that Native people are dying. And there's situations on reservations where there is no running water, there is no electricity. And so, there is no resources around certain areas. So we had to make sure that the resources got out to our communities and even the urban area. And I'm talking about here in Orange County, the urban area. So a lot of the history, has shaped the work that we do, but for Indian people, it's a endless topics, endless matters, subject matters, from education to health, to sovereignty, to water rights, to land rights, to hunting rights. I mean, it's endless. And I think that's why you see me in a lot of different spaces, and you see me in a lot of different meetings of different subject areas, is because you have to understand is that it's not because we're a special group. We have that political right as Indian people. And even with the Indian Child Welfare Act and the court system, I mean, it's just endless, folks. And so we need allies. And if there's anybody out there that wants to learn from our history and be a part of shaping, the future of the work that we need to do, I just say, please join me. I'm welcome to teach and to share and to bring you on and to take you under my wing and, bring that experience so that you can have, whether you're native or non-native, it's what we believe is what's in your heart. It's what we believe and what you want to offer and to bring in a good way. So I just want to just say it as that for Indian people in Indian country, urban Indians, on the reservation Indians, there's so much work for us to do. So I just want to, bring it out there that if there's anybody out there that wants to help support, and I'm calling out to even our political leaders that, please keep Indian people in mind. We're out there, and our last names may be of Spanish last names, but we're Native, given that history of the mission system here in California. A lot of us are Native people, regardless of the last name. Don't get fooled by that. So I want to just, I'm really just happy to be on this panel and bringing a Native voice. And I just feel like, I'm bringing a Native voice in Orange County, and Deb Halan's bringing it over there in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Lupe. I'll jump in really briefly on this question. I know time is ending, but I just want to point out, as Lupe mentioned, or at least alluded to, that historians for most of our history have really documented the history of the powerful elites. And so history was only history if the president and Congress declared, right, of people who've oppressed others. And people who have been oppressed haven't had a history from the perspective of these historians. But since the 1960s, with the rise of social historians, the women's movement, the ethnic studies movements, and civil rights movements, there's more of an emphasis now in terms of understanding that oppressed peoples have history, our communities have history. So for me, I'm really proud that the school district, Santa Ana Unified School District, will begin to implement the ethnic studies requirement for graduation beginning this fall, with the histories of American Indian, Native Americans, and California Indian communities, Asian Americans, African Americans, and Chicana and Chicano Latinos. So part of what we're trying to do in the district is to recapture our history, make sure that our students understand that their parents make history every single day when they join ADA in the protests at the hotels, and when they are actively involved with the consul with immigrant rights. And so that's history. And so I'm so proud that the Board of Education supported this, and I'm looking forward to seeing our young people experience an education that also enables them to be working hand in hand with the community to make sure that they advance equitable policies and politics. So that's it on my end.
So I wanted to just thank Lupe for being, that strong voice, right? To remind us that, to me, history is identity, right? I mean, if you don't have a history, then, it's very tough to understand who you are, where you've been and where you're going to go. And what's unfortunate is that, history has been dishonest, right? It's been selective, and that's what's been difficult, because a lot of those, people who've, who struggle with identity, don't have much to fall back on. For those of us who were, taught with textbooks that omitted realities and sort of the ugliness of the past, is something that I think is really, a moment now to admit it, because the only way we can overcome that is to understand it, dissect it, reconcile ourselves with it. But this country, as beautiful as it is in its in its possibilities as an experiment, it has a troubled past, right? So there's a political satirist, comedian, George Carlin, who I love. He says, this was a country that was formed by slave owners who wanted to be free, right? So there was a dilemma right from the outset. But I think, there are steps that, we are taking now, voices like Lupe's efforts and, school districts, and I'm a Chicano studies minor as well. And, what's interesting is that moments form who you are, right? So Pete's sort of perspective on Obama's moment as he's coming in 2008 and he's facing a global recession, right? It's being handed to him as he's coming into office. That probably formed part of how he led. And for us right now, I mean, because it's funny, because I came into office at the council in 2008 as well, when the recession was coming in. So it forms who you are. I became a lot more fiscally nervous, right? Because we were coming into a moment where things were difficult, where our general fund had gone down to 3 million, and we were talking about bankruptcy in the city. So that forms who you are. It says, it kind of like children of the Depression are never going to be people that were, ready to spend, and they were always more frugal. I think here, the pandemic, where we are, it's going to change our lives with respect to public health, which is an important thing, because we've always seen that public health has been a problem in our community, especially Santana and communities of color. But this pandemic really brought out how fragile and vulnerable we really are. And I think this moment is going to frame us. And I feel kind of cursed, because I came in on the council during a recession. I'm coming in as mayor during a pandemic. So I'm thinking, oh my God, look, I'm bookended by these two crises. But I think it's also back to the whole leadership thing. It's, if you can lead during moments of crisis, you can lead anytime. But I just think, we are at a pivotal moment where I think, Pete would have been, and I'm hoping he documented this past year in his time off, because, this is a very, very significant historic moment that we're all living through, that we're going to reflect back on and see who did something, who helped, because, there are going to be a lot of folks who after the fact are going to say, those 700 families who lost a loved one here in Santana are going to be very troubled. And that's where, sort of my concern comes from, is that there'll be a moment of reckoning, and, and that's still to come. That crisis is still yet to be written, but in any event, that's my take on this.
Absolutely fabulous. I really appreciate from Lupe hearing the invitation to be an ally and to stand up alongside the longest struggle, I think, in our national history. And also from Rigo, that this is about telling our story, and from Mr. Sarmiento about knowing who we are. Those are really, really powerful things. And I think what you guys have done in this period of time, which has just been perfect, is really humanize leadership and make it accessible, whether it's accessible by commenting and raising our voice, or standing up and becoming leaders. And I want to highlight that this talk, as well as Mr. Souza's talk, will be available for 90 days on the platform. So let's make sure more people in Orange County beyond just today see and watch this, because as an emerging leader in Santa Ana and in OC, I'm inspired, and I know many, many more people who would love to hear this from you. And it was just a fabulous experience. So thank you so much all for joining us, and I hope to see you out and about.